Welcome to another episode of the segment I've been doing, We the People. And it is fitting that today I have a gentleman who, when I found out about him and when I researched him, Googled about him, and tried talking to him, he did inspire me in context of what I had been looking here in Dallas, that folks from subcontinental Asia, we are not naturally inclined to participate in local politics. But here was a gentleman who not only successfully transitioned from business into public service, but was successful at it, and at a very young age. And he did navigate through that realm, and he has been making those transitions. And what he's up to now, we will be speaking with him. And without further ado, I have my guest today, Mr. Salman Bhojani. Salman, welcome. How are you?
Good. How are you, man?
Very good. Thank you for gracing my segment. I really appreciate that. If we can just start with a brief introduction there for people who don't know you. I know a lot of people in Dallas-Fort Worth know you, but just for those folks who may not be aware of that, and then we can take it from there.
Sure. Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure, talking to you. So I was born in Pakistan and moved to Canada when I was 10 years old with my family for better business and better educational opportunities, and then subsequently moved to United States in 1999. So I was about 19 years old. And as a young adult, I moved in the United States, looking at all the liberties and all the hard work pays off in this country, right? And that's what I had believed when I moved here. And so started by working at gas stations, mopping floors, cleaning restrooms, stocking coolers at $6 an hour. So making minimum wage. It's very difficult, to make any money while you're at minimum wage. But so I worked at 3 different gas stations, and because nobody would give me more than 40 hours a week. Eventually managed a gas station, became a clerk, managed it, and then bought my own gas station in 2003, and had several stores in 2008 when I thought about doing something more honorable, just selling, sort of other products, was not something that I really enjoyed doing. I felt when I wanted to do more honorable and serve the community in some capacity. So my financial advisor recommended that I look into law school and become an attorney. And so that's when I, looked at that, and I really fell in love with that profession. I didn't know at that time any attorneys. So I reached out to a lot of attorneys and felt that this is something that I could do myself. And at that time I had 2 kids. My parents were living with me. I was already married. So it was not something that I was a very young guy. And I was already established in business. So it's difficult to leave business and go to, switch careers. So what I did was I applied to SMU evening school, evening in law school. So it's a 4-year program, and it's from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. every day. And so in the morning I would go to my gas stations, and in the evening I would go to law school. And so it was a tough 4 years of my life. But it paid off at the end. I did a lot of internships and got good grades, studied really well, and got a phenomenal opportunity to work at Haynes & Boone, which is a large law firm in North Texas, and got to practice some law with some of the brightest legal minds, and had a good time. And then I worked there for 2 years, and I felt that this was something that I wanted to start my own business, right? I mean, as South Asians, we're very entrepreneurial, right? And so I was also entrepreneurial. I had my own businesses. So I felt like that's something that I could do myself. And so I started my own practice in 2015 and opened up a title company and started a real estate investment as well on the side. And that paid off as well, quite well. I mean, even recently. In 2016, I mean, I don't know if you want me to go to politics or not, but that's what my sort of business life has been so far. It's sort of like the American dream, right? You come to America with nothing and no money, and you can make something out of it, and if you work hard and are willing to be in the long run.
You put in the hard yards, and you get to a point where you started looking at, and then you make those jumps. So talking about jumps, you thought about public office, and when you decided and shared with your immediate circle that, okay, this is something that I'm definitely going to do, initial reactions, especially considering how politics is perceived within our community?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, politics is a taboo subject in our community because we think that politicians are corrupt, from where we come from. And so you don't want to be associated with that corruption or politics. And even my parents, when I told them, they were like, no, we don't engage in politics. We're in business, we're good. Why do you need to do that? And part of me was, in 2016, when we had elected our former president, it felt like that was not right for us. And as soon as he came to power in January of 2017, he instituted a Muslim ban from 15 Muslim countries. And so that's when I knew that, I could be sitting on the sidelines and just complaining like the rest of us, or I could sort of be the change that I wanted to see in the world and actually put my name in the hat and run for office and make a substantial impact for our community and let people know that, hey, Muslims are contributing citizens of the United States and we should be respected as much as any other race. And so that's what my goal was. And I explained to them that, hey, this is something that even if we don't win, it's not about winning, but it's about at least running for office and doing a good job and always portraying positive side of our faith, right? Because there's a lot in the media that people talk about, but what people don't talk about sometimes are people like me and you doing good things in the community and spreading that information. And so it was also about inspiring the next generation of youth who are born in this country, who can do a better job in politics, from letting them know this is also a career, right? Our South Asian parents are mostly like, hey, become a doctor, become a lawyer, become a dentist, become all these professions, but nobody talks about like professions like politics. And so I wanted to sort of bring that into the rhetoric of common South Asian community. It was obviously, like you said, right, it's always a pushback. But I think if you're passionate about something, then you can really, make people understand this is important. And I think now I see a lot of South Asians taking notice of this and making their kids understand that, hey, this is also a profession that you can go. You can run for Congress. You can do so many different things to make our community better.
Right. So we've spoken about perception, but reality hits when you actually become part of the system. So perception while you are running for office, and a few lessons learned as you became city council member. So any reality versus perception lessons that you learned that you absolutely were not aware of and they just hit you?
Sure. I mean, typically, we live in Dallas-Fort Worth area in the American society, and our neighbors are cordial to us. There's no animosity as such. Until you run for office, right? That's the caveat, right? That if you're not seeking an elected office in let's say their country, everybody's okay with that, right? And it's just, I think, more of ignorance than anything else. I think Americans generally are not bad people. They're just there's some sensitivity to what has happened in 9/11, and there's aftermath of that. The thought process that, hey, Muslims have done this and so they must be bad. So there's generalization, prejudice, and all that. And so that comes out in a very negative way when you're running for office. People start thinking that we cannot have a terrorist be part of our elected office. We cannot have somebody who can make women wear hijab, or somebody who can bring Sharia law to this country or the city or whatever. I mean, these are the buzzwords that you hear in the news, and then that's what they spit out, right? So, and there's very minute, like there's a minority of people that do that, right? But when you're running for office and you're out there at the polls and people come and give you hatred, we kind of feel like, hey, I'm here to help our city. I'm passionate about giving back to the community. Otherwise, I would not be here. It's so much easier to be at the law firm and make $400 an hour, right? I mean, I could do that as easy. But I'm here and standing in front of this, the polling location, asking for your vote is because I do want to serve the community in a better capacity. And what's interesting is I was already as part of the park board in Euless for 3 years when I ran for office. And so I already had a position, but it was not an elected position. So that's why I say when you're in an elected position, that's when you get a lot of different people, the perspectives. And I think my response was very positive, right? I kept on reminding people that I'm here to serve the community. If it was negative, I think they would have gotten a different, a sense of our community members. And so I always think about what do I say to people that reflects bad on my community, right? At the end of the day, because we are ambassadors of our community, whether we like it or not. And so I always try to be positive and encouraging and just say, hey, look, I'm a hardworking individual. I've lived the American dream. I'm here, and now I want to give that back to all the community, not just my community. I want to represent entire citizens of Euless, and I think that's what resonated with people. And eventually I was able to win and become the first minority in the history of the city to be elected to Euless City Council, right? So some people say I was the first Muslim. That's true, but I was the first minority. Like, no, in a minority majority city like Euless, there was no African American, there were no Hispanic city council members, and there's not one right now as well, right? So I've blazed a trail, and inshallah, more people will follow that. But at the end of the day, it's important to represent our community in a positive light and say, hey, Islam is a religion of peace. It's not what people think it is. And I think, if we show that, people realize that Muslims are contributing citizens of our country.
Absolutely. So we're going to fast forward to what I see in the background. So from city council to Senate. Mm-hmm. So why Senate? Why not just, or maybe go to the House? Why Senate?
Yeah, so things have changed. Like I said, so Senate was initially, I announced that I was going to run for Senate District 9 in May. And I launched my campaign knowing that the district would be different, but I didn't know what they would look like because I don't have experience. I was not here like 10 years ago in politically involved to know what happens. But every 10 years when we have a census, the Texas Legislature draws out different maps. And so I had heard that people can, take you out of that race. But I didn't know, I didn't have experience, but it was important for me to start that race so that way I could get name recognition, I could raise funds, I could work the district. So recently, about 3 weeks ago or so, the Texas Legislature drew my home out of the district that I was planning to run. And they not only drew it out, but they also made it extremely difficult. They made it extremely Republican, and I'm running as a Democrat in that district. And so it will be an extremely difficult race to win as well. And especially for somebody like me, a South Asian or a Muslim, right? So looking at all the perspectives, I had suspended my campaign about 2 weeks ago. Today itself, about a few hours ago, I announced that I'm running for Texas House District 92, which currently I live in. And I feel that that's a much better race to be at because it has a lot of people from diverse backgrounds in that district. 70% of that district is composed of people of color, like you and I. And so I feel that's a better district to run and obviously represent the community like how I did in Euless, right? Euless was the same way. It became a minority majority city, and therefore I could talk to more people and bring them out to vote. And that's what my plan is to do in this race as well.
All right, so this is the first time, and as we were speaking off here, I had a very humbling experience because I thought, hey man, I participate, I read on politics, I watch news, but I had no idea about this whole districting. So briefly explain to those folks who don't know what happens after every census and how this impacts politicians plus voters. As someone as myself who might be going to vote for example, Salman, and once the maps are redrawn, as you mentioned, now Salman is out of the picture and there is someone else. So what is this and how it impacts?
So in a higher level, it's basically meant to understand what the demographics are, how many people are now living in Texas, and how do you split. There are 150 house districts in Texas, right? So how do you take that whole map and then slice and dice it into 150 equal portions? That's the job of the Texas Legislature every 10 years. Now, it could be simple in drawing the lines based on city. So that way you have the proper lines drawn. You can base it on counties if the county is small, but you need to have equal number of people. So that's how they try to fix that. Now, I mean, for decades, and this is not only a Republican issue, it's a Democrat issue as well. Whoever is in power in the Texas Legislature draws maps that favor them so that way they can be in power for the next 10 more years so they can control the next process as well. And so the way they do that it's called packing and cracking the minority vote. So the way they do it is, first of all, they'll try to create districts that are very Republican, like what happened to me, Senate District 9. It was a sort of 50-50 or so, maybe 55 Republican, 45 Democrats, but you could find more Democrats because if you look at the census data, overwhelmingly, it tells you that 95% of the growth in Texas has been in people of color.
Yes.
And generally, people of color vote democratically. People that move from California and other states are Democrats and moving here. So generally, Texas has become more democratic. Now, how do you still keep in power by taking your districts more Republican and then building districts where you can pack all the minorities in one district or two districts or few minority districts that are obviously that are not majority, meaning that they can still be as a cohesive body. 150, they need, let's say, more than 75 to be Republican, right? So they keep, let's say, 90, 100 districts Republican, and they give others to Democrats willingly, right? And say, hey, you can have this, but we will not let you come into our space. And so that's what and so let's say if it's a district like Euless, right? It was split in two different districts before. Now with the overwhelmingly minority population, they split that into three different districts. So let's say if there were 50% districts, 50% minority districts, they became divided by three, right? So now, 17 and a half or so percent, right? So now the minorities don't have any significant voice that they can be heard. So they cannot elect a candidate of their choice, right? So that's the issue with redistricting. But then every so often, there's a district like AG 92 that's created. Like I said, that is for Democrats, basically for minorities, that they can appoint or elect their own people. So that's how I've decided to run for that district,
Okay.
which is much more favorable for that.
Right. And to your point, you mentioned some details. So I was looking at it, 95% of Texas population increase in last decade has been people of color, and Hispanics now have been good high 90%, but the redistricting exercise has given them one less district based on the new maps that were drawn. And that is not it. African Americans have actually lost the one district that they were majority in, and there are still about 8 districts, and this is for Senate, that have no clear majority based on new ones. So yes, a lot of number crunching and a lot of political tug of war going on. Now, in terms of looking forward, and how can I as a voter play my part in terms of doing something where we become active participants in this process? Probably it's going to be long term, but there's got to be some start.
Yeah, I think we need to just generally bring elections and voting in our everyday life. It's about, we're all creatures of habit, right? So what me and my wife Nima, we all do is every election we go out and vote during early voting. So that's another thing that people don't realize. People say, oh, November 2nd. Okay, November 2nd is election day. Let's vote on November 2nd. When you go to vote on election day, there's going to be long lines. And again, that should not deter people from voting, but you have time. I mean, early voting happens almost 2 weeks, where you have time from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. to go out and vote. And it also happens on weekends. So, and usually at that time, you're in and out in 5 minutes, right? And so first we need to sort of build that into our routine and say, okay, I'm going to make a plan to vote, and I'm going to take my family, because what that does is, like, every time we take our kids, even though they can't vote, they're the ones that actually they go out and vote. Obviously we're there behind them, because that is teaching them that this is part of the social fabric that we need to be part of every single time. And so now they're building a habit as well. So I know when they turn 18, they're going to vote for sure, right? And so how do we create that awareness among our community? I think another issue for that is I talk to a lot of people, and so they say, I don't know what's on the ballot. I don't know who to vote for, right? And so that fear of voting for somebody wrong just does not let them go out to vote. So I understand that. So what I've done is, and I can share that with you as well, for this constitutional amendment election that's going on right now, actually happening right now as we speak, and it ends in 2 weeks, in November 2nd, that there are no candidates on that ballot. You will not see any candidates. You'll see 8 constitutional amendments to the Texas Constitution. So this is a direct way you can influence the state laws by going out and vote. So there are 8 amendments that the legislature has put out, and I've made a video of exactly what those are and what I'm voting for and what I'm voting against. Because I felt like I should be more neutral and just say pros and cons, but our community wants more hand holding than that, right? They want to say, hey, here's what I'm voting for. You can make up your own mind. And if you trust me, then you may vote the same way. But it's everybody should vote whatever they think. But and then the next time there will be election, there will be candidates. I'm planning to make another video that talks about pros and cons for each candidate, right? So that way they understand. Another thing is not a lot of our community members understand what primaries are. They generally don't vote in primaries, and that's really important, right? Especially for my race. My race is such that if anybody that wins the primary in HD 92 is most likely going to win that general election, because majority of the district is Democrat, right? So whichever Democrat comes out of successful in the primary will most likely win the general election. So primary is going to be very crowded. There'll be a lot of people in the primaries. And so it's important for South Asians and other community members to come out and vote for the candidate of their choice. But obviously they need to research a lot, right? So if we can come up with non-partisan voter guides, right, you're not favoring one candidate or the other, you're just sort of laying out the information and saying, hey, here's the website. I think that could really be instrumental. There are nonprofit organizations like SAVE. I think they have an acronym called SAVE. I think it's Desi's sort of voting South Asian activist or whatever, voting together or something like that. And there are a lot of nonprofit organizations like that whose mandate is to bring more people out to vote. There are approximately about 270,000 South Asians in I think Texas. And so out of that, I think in last election, only 4,000 voted. So you can think about that. It's nothing, it's negligible. But until we increase that number, people won't look at us in any meaningful way that, hey, this group has a lot of power. Because I'll give you a quick example. Ted Cruz against Beto O'Rourke, right? In 2018. Beto lost Texas by, I want to say 400,000 or 500,000 votes.
440,000.
Something, right?
Approximately.
And so if you look at how many South Asians are there, I mean, I don't think 440,000 people, if they had come out, we could have easily, Beto could have won in that campaign if more South Asians came out, if more Muslims came out. We can swing a huge election like that if we become a good voting bloc and say, hey, we're going to vote like this, so because we want our voices heard. So that's a couple of things that we can do as a community.
Right. So you bring up a very good point. And going back to the community, we put a lot of emphasis on just Desi community. Our numbers are not that much where only our community, if votes for someone, we will be able to put that person in office. Yes, it will be a lot better than not voting. And this, I'm bringing it to inter-community alliances, African Americans, Hispanics. Mm-hmm. We lack that. Yes. I mean, why do you think we lack that? And how can we work on that going forward? Of course, primaries are coming. Midterm elections are around the corner. Yes, it's next November, but the process itself is about to start, underway. So how can we work on that? Inter-community alliances.
That's a good point. I mean, I wonder about that every time myself. I think, it will require, like, for example, if a lot of people come and tell me, okay, how do I get inside the South Asian community? There's no quick answer, or the Muslim community for that matter, right? I mean, when I tell people there are 73 different sects within the faith of Islam, people are like, oh, we didn't know that. I mean, yeah, it's a very diverse, there's a lot of diversity within the faith of Islam, right? When people don't realize it, there's no unison of voice where one leader is going to stand up and say, I am speaking on behalf of all Muslims. That doesn't work, right? Or that's not there actually. That could work, but that's not there right now. So same thing with the African American community. Same thing with the Hispanic community. There's no one voice that can be for entire community. So what you need to do is generally in the local, groups that are out there, you find leaders, and you'll see that it's similar to our South Asian community where there's a lot of chiefs but very few Indians, right? And so there are a lot of people who are self-proclaimed to be leaders of the, African American community or Hispanic community, but there are very few followers. So we need to really engage the community in a meaningful way, meaning there has to be a multi-prong approach, right? It cannot be just, okay, I'm just going to reach out to all African American and I'm going to work on that. No, I think if we can bring in a community of like-minded minority members and then brainstorm with them, right? Because every member of that community would know how to infiltrate their own community members, right? And so if we can come up with a pluralistic interfaith or intercultural organization, I think that would be better, right? Because we like to be in our own silos, right? South Asians will tend to be like Desi's community will tend to be together. Muslims will tend to be together. Africans tend to be together, or Hispanic community tends to be together. How can we, like you said, right, build bridges amongst the communities in order to better understand and better get representation, so that way we can vote together and derive that benefit from each other.
Yes. Now, another thing we're talking about, the unison, is a lot of times what I've seen is socially we might cross that bridge. From a business context, we are successful business owners. We're not taking our business presence into that social presence, turning that into a political presence. How can we transform that? Because Dallas-Fort Worth, we have so many Indian, Pakistani, Muslim business owners, such fantastic, heavy, hardcore, socially powerful individuals and groups. How can we translate that corporate business presence plus social presence into political presence?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wonder about that. I think one way that can be harnessed is by donating to campaigns that, like, if a business it has to deal with some environmental friendly products or so, right? If they donate to campaigns or candidates that are environmental conscious, that think about global warming and climate change, I think that could work out, right? In terms of, again, like, our community is a little bit behind in terms of getting politically engaged, so that's a topic that needs to be reckoned with, right? How is a successful business owner going to even use or harness their success in business to gain some political ground, right? Sometimes a astute business owner may hire a lobbyist and pay them money so that way they can go and fight for their particular industry, or they'll come together as an industry, right? So there are a lot of, let's say, for example, gas station owners that are Pakistani or Indian or Desi owned. So they'll form a group and an alliance and say, okay, let's hire lobbyists to go to Austin or go to Washington to fight for issues that concern us. That's one way. But another issue that I feel that people tell me all the time is they don't want to be political at all in terms of their business. Because, for example, if an insurance agent starts, saying a lot of nasty things against, let's say, Republicans, the insurance agent may feel that, okay, the Republican may not give him the business, right? They may take the business away. And so we're concerned about that as well, right? That are we going to be marginalized? Are we going to be, there's going to be prejudice based on our political views? And so that's why generally I've seen a lot of South Asians and a lot of community members stay totally clear of any politics or taking any sides, any candidate, because of that same fact that they'd rather continue that business coming up than to ruin that by siding with one candidate or the other.
Right. So a very good point there. My question to that is, so does that also mean that we may want to start helping, not really educating, but maybe in the long run, educating our business owners how they can run a successful business and at the same time be actively participating in politics without jeopardizing their business by virtue of their personal political opinion? So I guess that is an education point that we need to do when it comes to our community.
I think we need to come up with a strategy more than just education, because what will you educate them, right? As soon as you let them know that, hey, yes, you can support candidates, right? Progressive candidates or whatever that matches with your values. I mean, again, we have a lot of diversity within our community as well. Some people are Republicans, some people are Democrats. That be whatever that is, right? That's up to them. But if our community comes out or that business owner comes out and donates $5,000, $10,000 to a candidate, that's a public record, right? So they may ask, and a lot of people do ask me, hey, if I'm going to donate to you, is it going to be public record? I was like, yes, absolutely. There's no lying to that. Everything is anything that you do in the public arena when you run for office is public, right? And so, I don't want my name to appear, because as soon as you search, Umair Khan, okay, you'll figure out who has he donated to, right? Or has it been Republicans only? Has it been Democrats only? So it's like an open book, right? So that's, I think some people are concerned about the confidentiality of that, right? They don't mind the money. A lot of people say, oh, I don't want to give it, but I'll ask my cousin to donate to your campaign or something, right? Because I don't want my name to be used. So I see their point in some capacity. So it's not about educating, it's about trying to figure out long term, right? What is good for our community. I mean, we're here in this country. My biggest pet peeve is I find aunties and uncles talking about what Imran Khan is doing in Pakistan, which is great. You can talk about that, but at the end of the day, this is your country. This is where your kids are, probably most likely born or will stay. You'll stay here for a long time. So why not invest more time and resources in learning about what Trump is doing here, or what Biden is doing here, or what your local, city council members are doing. People don't realize every May there is a municipal election, every single May. People just wait for the presidential election, right? Or in our community sometimes, right? And so if they realize that every May there's a municipal election where they can go for and vote for their local city council member, which impacts them a lot more than they think, right? Because all the road construction, library, water, utilities, police, fire, like everything is controlled by the city. And so I think that's my pet peeve. And I think that's where education is needed, right? And education is needed in terms of maybe having, and I'm going to do that for my campaign as well, having multiple languages, doing videos and communication in multiple languages, right? Because we do have a lot of diversity, right? I mean, if they're Asians, if they're Chinese or Vietnamese or Hindi or Urdu, Gujarati, there's so many languages that we speak. I think that's where we can educate them in their own language, because people tend to look at videos and stuff in their own language more than, and I'm talking about like maybe older people, right? Our youth, I think, are trying to integrate well into society, and that's I want to inspire the youth to run for office, right? And that's why I always, anytime you have somebody that wants to run for office, just connect them to me, because it does take a lot of effort to do that, and you need to have a know-how. And a lot of people don't even support other campaigns to volunteer at them. So I always tell the youth to start by supporting or volunteering at another person's campaign. It doesn't have to be Desi. It can be anybody that's local. So you know how to run a campaign. You get familiar with that, and then figure out whatever best for you.
Fantastic advice. Now, coming to as we approach, come close to our time, House District 92. Why Salman Bhojani? What have you done that people who will hear your name, oh, this guy used to be Euless City Council. Okay, he's done a good job. I have no idea who Salman Bhojani is. So why Salman Bhojani for 92?
Sure, yeah, it's a great question. And like I said, it'll be a very crowded Democratic primary. The edge that I have is I have been elected already, right? A lot of people throw their name in the hat and say, okay, I'm going to run for AZ 92. Okay, but how electable are you, right? So I've already proven the electability factor. I have served on the city council for 3 years and have done such a great job that in my last year, my fellow city council members elected me as a mayor pro tem for the city of Euless. And so, that's a big accomplishment that, a lot of people like me, my work and all that. And so HD 92, a big portion of Euless is in HD 92. So I get to represent my city from the state now, right? Another thing is I have owned a gas station, a business in this district since 22 years. Or I think 20 years, yeah, about 22 years or so. And that's something that I've invested already in the district, and I know like what it takes, right? It's a big African American community there. There's a big Hispanic community there. There's a South Asian community, probably about 11% of the community is South Asian. So it is composed of different people of color, and so it should be something that I can resonate with that, just like how I was able to resonate with when I was at Euless City Council. Yeah, another thing I forgot to mention is that I've raised about $150,000 already for the Senate campaign. So I'll be bringing that money to this campaign, which will put me ahead of any candidate that sort of decides to come in the race. They have no money they're bringing it. I'm already bringing $150,000 to the race.
I'm glad you mentioned that. So for so many people who keep asking, why should I donate to a political campaign? Why can't you just go and ask for votes? So what will $150,000 do or go towards to make sure that you get elected? I mean, why is it important for me to donate?
Sure. That's a great question. In 150,000, by the way, it's probably 15% of what I need to raise. I mean, it'll take $1 million to run this race, basically. And that money, most of it goes there. So there are a lot of mailers you need to send to people that are voting, that are registered voters, right? And each mailer can cost a lot of money. So you're talking about the stamp, you're talking about printing cost of that mailer. It could be big and colorful and all that, designing cost of that, editing cost of that, and then then sending it basically, right? And so it could be costing $15,000 just for one mailer. If I want to send one mailer today, it can cost $15,000 to $20,000. Second thing is having a staff that's dedicated, a full-time staff, because this is not a city council campaign. So city council campaign, just to give you proportion, I raised $30,000 in a city council campaign, right? So now this is more than six figures, maybe seven figures race, right? And so this is going to be a much bigger race, where 60,000 people live in Euless, 30,000 registered voters. This district has 200,000 people, and registered voters are going to be like more 60 to 70,000 registered voters. So you already are double the size, and it's a larger district where you need to sort of really work hard on that. And so it's not like volunteers can do it. You need full-time campaign staff to do it. So that is another huge part of the budget. And then just doing that video, I don't know if you've seen the Senate District 9 video that I made. That was like $15,000 just in one video. It was a minute and a half or 2 minute video. So you can imagine, like, and this is not like, I tried to find the best person to do it, but that's the going rate for these things, right? And in order to make it very professional, and you saw the video, right? It's not an amateur sort of doing a video, right? Something, and especially because we have this baggage on us, right? That some people say, oh, the South Asians will not do really a professional job, right? Or they'll just do half-hearted job or something, right? So we have to be in order to overcome that, we have to be extra professional. We have to do like this sign that I have behind, right? I mean, so everything has to be very crisp and has to be professional. So that way we are projecting an image of somebody that is a white person or a black person or whatever it is, we are professional, right? And that's what I think we have to counteract as well. And so in order to run a professional campaign, it needs resources, right? No matter how and I'll tell you one thing, people have donated to my campaign, they have not come out to vote. That's how tough it is. I mean, it's easier for them to say, give me money and hey, here $500, go and good luck and all that. We wish you best of luck. But they may not be able to take time out of their schedule to take 5 minutes out of their schedule to vote, right? So that's how difficult it is. There's so many barriers to voting. I mean, if I sit here, we can spend hours just discussing what are the barriers, especially in the minds of South Asians or Desis or minority community, right? So just that's the stigma that's attached to that. And that's why we need to demystify it. So I'll give you an example. Last cycle in this district, there were only 500 South Asians, all Asian 500 that voted in a district that has 200,000 people.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. There has 15,000 South Asians in this district. Only 500 came out to vote. What percentage is that? Nothing, right? Like why, right? So that's my question, why, right? Until we become a sizable voting population, candidates like me will have a difficult time. And candidates who are Caucasian or other races will not look at our community in a meaningful way. Because think about it, as a candidate, like you said, right? Why do I need money? Okay, well, now if I need to infiltrate the South Asian community or African American community, how will I do that? I mean, I need to hire some people to do that and spend resources, time, and all that. And you have to actually account for everything. Right? Even though I want to pay for it myself, if I had a lunch with somebody about my campaign, I have to put that as a campaign expense, right? And so I'll pay for it, but I still have to put that as an expense. So there's a lot of money that's spent in doing that. But if a candidate is running for election and the South Asian community is big, but they don't come out and vote in large numbers, a candidate will say, I don't want to invest my good money for bad returns. I would rather put that money in African American or Hispanic, community, because they vote in a larger number than Asian Americans. Does that make sense? So we are marginalizing ourselves by not going out to vote. It's very simple, right? The more you vote, the bigger population you become, and more candidates will come knocking on your door and say, Umair, what can I do for you, right? And that's what you need. Because when I ran for Euless City Council, the first thing I did is, let me look at last 3 elections, who came out to vote. no South Asians, but whoever came out to vote, I knocked on their door, because in Euless, in city election, I can go alone by myself and knock on their doors, because there are not that many people, right? So, and how can I help you? I can ask that question. But if you go vote tomorrow, you'll be on that ballot as well, and then somebody will come and knock on your door. Omar, well, how can I help you? And that's what we need more of.
That is something that I have seen. We don't want to go out and vote. We don't want to spend time researching folks on the ballot. I have seen a close circle. We're only concerned with the presidential elections. I have also seen where we don't want to worry about becoming political, and statements I hear, hey, let's not make this a political statement, even if that is a very factual statement or it's a communication of facts. But then again, come presidential election time, come the results time for any city or state or presidential results, we do want to complain. We don't want to participate, do our duty, but we do want to complain. So I guess going back to everything that you mentioned, yes, first we need to really look at what our responsibility is, and then once we fulfill that, then we can ask, hey Salman, what about my rights? So you promised me this, so what about this? So I mean, fantastic. I'm pretty sure we're going to have some more conversations as your campaign moves along, because whatever I've read and whatever I've seen, you've done some good work in Euless, and I've absolutely no doubts, even looking at your videos, and I was just browsing through your content, that you're going to keep doing that. Any parting words for this session, at least for people who might be watching you, who will be watching you or listening to you?
Yeah, I'll just say, keep being engaged, right? I think that's how we get our voices back. Whatever you do, voting is obviously number one priority, but not just voting yourself and your family. I also bring my parents out every time we go vote, but bring other families, make it an event, make it like a habit, and make it an event where you're going and you're discussing who I should vote for. What has he done for me? And then when you vote for candidates, ask them, what are you going to do for me? I'm going to vote for you, or before or after, whatever, right? And once they get elected, and that's the one thing that I really, really feel our community needs to do, is petition our elected officials. When I was on Euless City Council, I have so many Caucasian people reaching out and saying, can you do this for me? Can you do this for me? And I did it, but I'm like, where are the Desis? Like, you've got a Desi city council member here in Euless. Why are the Desis not reaching out? I would reach out to them and say, what can I do for you? So I think when elected officials are elected, their goal is to serve the community, right? So they're not, I think we're very humble people. We're hardworking people. We don't want to, bother people. We think that we're bothering them, but we're not bothering them. That is their goal. That is their task. That is their job, right? And so I think that's one thing that I would say is, don't be afraid to petition whoever your elected official is, from the city to the county to the state to the federal government, because they're there to help each one of us. When you go out and vote, that's how you can really exercise that and make them accountable.
All right. Very insightful conversation with Salman Bhojani, who is running for House District 92, former city council member for city of Euless, person who's actually done it, who's walked the walk, and who continues to want to inspire our younger generations, at least here in Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. So we'll definitely be continuing our conversations as you move through this campaign. Thank you very much, Salman. And if you viewers, you have any questions regarding political participation, contribution, you know the name Salman Bhojani, or even just comment or reach out. That way, even one question answered means that someone is trying to understand some aspect of this whole political ecosystem. With that thought, once again, thank you very much, Salman, and good night.
My pleasure. Good night.